Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream, the final live stream recap of the Combine. Rob Staton, Robbie Williams here. I've just realized I haven't embedded the video for this onto Seahawks Draft Blog, so I'm going to go and do that now. And while I'm doing that, Robbie Williams is going to treat you to his thoughts on the offensive line workouts, Robbie, which I thought there were some positives, some disappointing things about it, people getting injured and not working out. But what were your sort of takeaways from today?
I just thought there's some deep offensive line group. There's some absolute dogs on the line. I mean, Zach Frazier, getting injured 3 months ago, broke his leg, and he was out there working out, and getting to see him actually do stuff. I mean, quite impressive. And I liked his story on NFL Network, what they were talking about him, liking just to get out and just punch people, loves run blocking, and so yeah, I like to pass block, but man, if I can get out and run block to knock some people over, man, that's the kind of guy I want on my offensive line. Just someone who's just going to get in there and just get nasty. Seems like somebody that would fit well on the team. And Roger Baumgartner from UW. I mean, there's another, just the specimen. He ran a 4.9 40 or something like that for just a big dude. And Grubb already knows him. That seems like another, guy that I could really see them being super interested in. It's just a good line draft overall. Just excited to kind of see, I could see them drafting 2, maybe even 3 offensive linemen this year, and maybe not draft, but Rosengarter. Thank you, Big Mike, help me out there. Yeah, I could see them drafting at least 2, and then picking up a couple undrafted free agents. Just some big time players.
I mean, Big Mike has said that I can't quite remember what you actually said, but Big Mike has.
I think I said I did. I think I just did something like Baumgartner or something like that. I don't know why the name slipped me.
he's accusing you of saying Baumgartner.
Baumgartner, no. Rosengarter.
Baumgartner would be something
it's been a long few days.
Okay. Listen, I thought it was, look, it goes to show, somebody is just posting the comment that Bo Limmer had the worst workout of all time, and he's on my list of guys who did well, so I don't know what some people see sometimes, Robbie. But anyway, I thought there was some real positives from this group. It just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I thought we were going to go out there and the big names were going to excel, Robbie, and we were just going to talk about, wow, this guy in round 1 and this guy in round 1. And that's still the case. There was all that talk about this is the best defensive line draft in 20 years or something like that. Peter Schrager had about 17 opportunities to say that he'd spoken to a general manager, which he always likes to do. The thing that impressed me more, Robbie, though, were the guys that are going to be available later on. Because if you actually look at it, everyone always says things like, look at the Detroit Lions offensive line. And I understand that because they've got, Taylor Decker was the 16th overall pick. Penei Sewell was a top 10 pick. And their center was like a top 25 pick. But they have 2 guards in there. One's a 3rd rounder and one was a cheap street free agent. You can't have 5 first-round picks on your line. You have got to find starters in those mid to late rounds. And that was the encouraging thing, is that I thought there were quite a few players who looked really good, who could be there mid to late rounds. So some of those names, I thought the 2 Michigan guys who practiced in the first group, Robbie, Trent Jones and Trevor Keegan, looked fantastic. Now, Trent Jones has not played a lot of football for Michigan. He's not got a lot of snaps. But watching him there, Robbie, I was thinking, go and get this guy in round 3 or round 4, that kind of range. There's just something about him. There was just something where his talent and potential goes way beyond sort of his experience in college. Well proportioned in terms of size, moved very, very well. His footwork was very good when he had to sort of kick. And, when they do that pass rush drop where they have to punch and then slide, too often when you're watching it, it's a really frustrating drill to watch, I think, because the players don't complete the kick slide. They just try and do it. It's too shallow. They just get the 3 kicks and then turn and go because they want to get out of the drill, essentially. You want to see them show a bit of patience there, go through the process, get some depth, get some width to that drop. And I thought that Trent Jones did an excellent job doing that. I thought he had a fantastic workout. And he's somebody that I may well watch him tonight, Robbie. As soon as they rushed through that final day and managed to get an entire workout session in 4 hours, I think I'll probably watch some Trent Jones tape tonight, because I was expecting to be going through to midnight over here, and it's only 10 o'clock. So time for a bit of Trent Jones later. I thought Trevor Keegan, who was working alongside him immediately after him in Group 1, also had a terrific time. Now, I've watched a fair bit of him. He's a no-frills blocker. He's got shorter arms than ideal, but tough as, old boots, Robbie. And to see him show a bit of athleticism and movement, I thought those two looked fantastic. Now, I always say you kind of have to pick a team and tap into the talent when the talent is there, Robbie. And Michigan are definitely that team this year. Washington are there as well. They've got a number of players. And I think it would be worthwhile for the Seahawks to take some of these Michigan guys. I bet Jim Harbaugh is going to take a few of them. And they really stood out for me. Tanner Bortolini stood out in the first group as just a thoroughly modern-day center, very athletic, explosive as heck, Robbie. His vertical and his broad jumps are fantastic, getting out of his stance very, very well, getting on the move. A lot of these centers who come into the league, Robbie, are not the finished article. Everybody kind of wants the big name center because, you want to get a first-round center. We've all heard of Jackson Powers Johnson. Go and get him. For this scheme, they've wanted, whether it's Washington's scheme, Seattle's scheme over the last 2 years, or Baltimore's scheme since they took Tyler Linderbaum, they've gone for those shorter, more athletic centers who can win with leverage. And that's what Tanner Bortolini is. So when I watched him, I thought he is somebody, again, I need to go back and review the tape. I had a real late ground grade on him, but I think there's a lot of potential there to work with, Robbie. So I need to bump him up. I need to go and watch him again. I love the fact you mentioned Zach Frazier out there getting it done, probably like 50% healthy, just muscling through it. Especially when there were guys out there, Robbie, like Olu Fashanu, who just basically ran a 40 and that's it. By the way, did you see Olu Fashanu has like 8.5-inch hands?
No, I didn't see that.
So he's like 6, whatever he is, like 6'5".
6'4", he's got tiny hands.
Can you remember when the draft and we kept going, tiny
hands, yeah.
Tiny hands.
Yeah.
His hands are small, about small. Like just imagine like shaking his hand. Like you'd probably expect like a grip breaking handshake. And he's going to be like these tiny little hands like shaking your hand on this massive man. So I thought that was, so good, fair play to Zach Frazier for getting out, musting on. Very quickly, Robbie, so because I've got a decent list. I thought Bo Limmer stood out. I don't know what the guy in the comments was saying there, because I thought Bo Limmer had a really good workout. I thought Dylan McMahon had a great workout, had a round 3 grade on him anyway. I think that the centers do not take a sense. Can we stop the Jackson Powers Johnson talk now? Because there are centers available later on that you can get from that group. I thought Cedric Van Pran had a really good workout, Robbie, another center. I thought JC Latham just looks amazing. It wasn't that his drills were sensational compared to the rest. Just the look of the guy. He looks like a top NFL offensive tackle. Gottlieb Adidzi, I think, is somebody who I want to go. I've not watched him, so I'm going to go and watch him now because I thought he looked really, really good. He could be a tackle guard type. And Tyler Geithner and Troy Fautanu and Taliese Fuagu, who are sort of the 3 bigger names, Robbie, I thought all did very, very well. I think Fuagu's locked himself in. I think the latest he will go is 10 to the Jets. Thought he was fantastic. Guyton, I think the latest he will go is probably 14 to the Saints. And I think with Fautanu, I think there's a really good chance the Seahawks will draft him, Robbie. And they might have to take him at 16.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking like some of the later round picks, but even like knowing that we have 2/3, I mean, that's going to be beneficial. I mean, complaining a lot about the second, but the 2/3 will help, I think, especially if you're going to look to draft, a center or guard, maybe around that time. The other guy that really stood out to me was that Garrett Greenfield from South Dakota State, or where was he from? South Dakota, I think South Dakota State.
Yeah, I think he's from there.
Yeah. I thought, man, that guy I thought he looked good too. It's so hard though to see, without having watched tape and see what they look like on film. But I just thought, I thought he moved well. He was a pretty explosive guy, it looked like. And you just never, some of those smaller school linemen who are just like cornbread fed, big beefy dudes and just strong as all can be, working out on the farm all summer and then just playing football. Those are the kind of guys that you want on your line as well. Just nasty, just get after it. And he kind of seemed like one of those guys. I don't know how high he would get drafted, but a lot of these guys you're talking about are just phenomenal players that we could get, and our line, like I said, I could see us targeting 2, maybe 3 linemen in this draft.
I think there's a decent chance of that. I think the big question is going to be, Robbie, and I want to ask you about the Seahawks and what I think there's 2 scenarios that really sort of stand out to me that I'm going to present to you, and you react to that, and then give me your thoughts on the way you think this is shaping up. But like I said before, the Seahawks have got they've invested a top 10 pick in Charles Cross, and I think Charles Cross has been underwhelming over 2 years. Not really underwhelming based on the grade, because I thought that the grade on him, I mean, I was not particularly high on Charles Cross, and I think really feel somewhat validated in that assessment, because I don't think he's been anything spectacular, and I hope that the new staff, Robbie, can elevate his game, because I think he's just been a bit of a finesse average tackle so far. But you've made that investment. Abe Lucas is still on the roster, and fingers crossed, touch wood, that he's going to come back. Anthony Bradford, they drafted a year ago. I don't think we should write him off, because Ryan Grubb says he wants people who are going to hit you in the face on the offensive line, and that's Anthony Bradford. So they also drafted a center a year ago. So, you kind of wonder, well, maybe they've already sort of addressed 2 of those spots, and it's just a case of adding a bit more depth. Maybe they bring back Evan Brown. And I don't think Damian Lewis will be back, but I suppose the question is, how desperately do you want to bring in like a left guard? And I'm not sure, because on the one hand, I could well imagine them saying, go and draft a tackle, move Abe Lucas inside, fortify your offensive line one way or another, just pick the 5 best guys, add some talent there in a great offensive line draft. But then part of me also thinks, with the guys that I've kind of talked about here, with that sort of middle range of offensive linemen really showing up, Robbie, and you've got 2 third-round picks and a 4th-round pick, could that actually be an area where you sort of add a lot of talent at a decent price in the middle rounds to pump up your offensive line? Or does that open things up in round 1? Yeah, you could still go offensive line there, but could you do something else?
No, I think you could. And I think this is why I think a trade down from the first is also a real possibility, because you can trade down, hopefully pick up either another 3rd or another 2nd-round pick. And, sorry.
Okay, Robbie's, I think he's got he's got something to do at home, so we'll check in with Robbie again in a second. I mean, look, keep your thoughts coming in the chat. I can see, we do react to some of your comments when they come into the chat. But if you have a specific question you want to ask, send us a super chat. And if you just want to support the channel as well, I mean, it has been a long 4 days of constant work. So if you would like to send in a supportive super chat, then that would be much appreciated as well. Rob, are you cool?
Yeah, sorry. My son just came down. So back to what I was saying, I think a trade down scenario I think that's a legitimate thought process there. I know we do it a lot, or that had been what we did a lot. I think it's still a possibility, just for the simple fact that the draft is so deep and they wanted more picks. Kind of wonder about the value at 16, whether you're going to get some better, can you possibly get 2 players instead of just that one at 16 and pick up some more talent for your roster. I know turning the roster a bunch is probably not what you're really looking for, but adding talent where you can in a draft this deep, it's something that we need it. And we need it. And I know there's the players that are going to fall to 16 that might make it super tempting, but I don't know. For something, after seeing these guys today and watching the wide receivers yesterday, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of talent to be had, and I would hate to miss out on a couple players over just one. I guess it depends on who it is, but I think a trade down is a possibility.
I think the problem with the trade down thing is, and it is something that I think could happen, I just think there's going to be a talent drop off if you move down to the extent that you're going to get the kind of pick that would make it worthwhile. So, for example, the trade down scenarios I've been kind of looking at are, do the Packers move up 9 spots from 25? They have 2 second-round picks. Do you get I think it's 58, their second one. That would put the Seahawks back in round 2, but at the same time, have you traded out of the range where you want to get, a really good player? Robbie's just gonna he's just got something to do, so it'll just be me for a second, but we'll get Robbie back in a moment. So that's part of the problem, is whether or not you get trade down too far to get back in that second round. And I generally think that's the case. I mean, I don't even think, if you sort of say that you want Troy Fautanu as like a, almost like a, and this is going to sound disrespectful to him, but it's not meant to be. If you think he's kind of like, well, at least, at the very least, you could get him at 16. I don't think, even if you trade out to 20, I don't think he's going to be there. Like, that's the latest I think you could trade down. I think when Miami and Dallas start coming on the board, they are going to be very, very interested in Troy Fautanu. And like, some of the questions with Fautanu were like, what is his length like? And yeah, he's not the tallest guy. He's not 6'6". He's not 6'7". But, he's around 6'4", and he's got 34.5-inch arms. So there are going to be teams like Dallas who would quite happily take Troy Fautanu and then say, well, we drafted I can't remember the guy's name. Apparently the Seahawks liked him a couple of years ago. They drafted the guy they've been playing at guard. They could move him to left tackle. It's Tyler Smith, I think it is. I can't remember. Can't remember that guy's name. But they had him, and they could put Fautanu, then it could work out who's going to play left tackle. So I don't think you could trade too far down. And even Fautanu could be gone. And then you kind of think, well, who are you going to take? Like, it's no good saying, okay, we've traded down to say 20 or 25. We'll take like the 4th or 5th best receiver on the board, get a really talented player. But that's not what the Seahawks need. So I think it's really, really, I think it's going to be really difficult for the Seahawks to trade down and feel good about it. And they might just have to stick and pick and get the best player, unless there is something else that could happen. And Robbie, this is what I'm going to put to you today. And like somebody said, Graham Barton wasn't working out today, and there was no answer as to why. And that's kind of why I say it was a bit hit and miss. Like, Barton didn't work out, Mims didn't work out after pulling a hamstring. There was somebody else who didn't work out either. It was a little bit frustrating. We didn't get to see them. So my thought, Robbie, as I was kind of like the things winding down, I've switched off because the NFL Network were talking nonsense, and I'm thinking, what happens next for the Seahawks? We've had the combine now. We've got free agency coming up. The Seahawks have got almost no money to spend. They will create some money in the next few days, but Robbie, they're not going to be able to compete with a lot of these other teams that have got a lot of money. I suspect the Seahawks are going to be on the periphery of free agency. There's not going to be a big splash. They're probably going to try and find value where they can. I think a lot of fans are going to be a little bit panicked, actually, when free agency starts. I think they're going to feel, what's going on here? I've got a theory for you. I want you to give me your reaction to this. I've put a lot of thought into it. And people in the chat, give me your thoughts on this as well, preferably in the form of a super chat.
If you miss it, he thinks JJ McCarthy's going to the top 5.
Yeah. I still think that. And have you noticed today, there's been a little bit more chatter about Arizona trading down?
Go ahead. Yeah, let's hear your thing.
Anyway, my theory is, did you see John Schneider at any point on that camera over the last 4 days, Robbie?
No.
Neither did I. He did not appear on the screen. And for years, they would always put John Schneider on the screen with Pete Carroll. John Schneider was the first guest with Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah on the first day of the NFL Combine last year. You didn't see him in the booth for the Seahawks once. His face did not appear on that screen. When he was on 710 a few days ago, he's basically admitted he'd not been able to watch the on-the-field drills, Robbie, because he was meeting with agents. And he was looking forward to watching the quarterbacks throw because he said it was a cool group. And then he said he was going to be... So he talked to the agents for the first couple of days. He was looking forward to watching the quarterbacks. And then there was also going to be a lot of talking to other teams about potential trades and stuff like that. Those are the words that he said, okay? I've got a theory here, Robbie, that I don't know how often the Seahawks are going to pick in this draft. I don't know how much work in terms of watching what happened this week John Schneider was that interested in. I wonder if he's got a big plan that's about to be put into action. I genuinely wonder whether in his world he has decided that the quarterback that he wants is in this draft. And he's been talking to those teams because he is preparing for a big, bold move. That would explain not studying all of the on-field drills religiously. It would explain all the vagueness around Geno Smith over the last few weeks and watching his words very carefully. It would explain immediately after the last draft, Robbie, when they said, why did you trade out of round 3 to get another pick this year? He said, it was a main aim for them to add stock for the 2024 draft. They said it was a priority to get more draft picks for this year. Now, admittedly, that part of my argument is undermined by the fact that they spent a second-round pick on Leonard Williams. But I'm just saying that was something that they said last year, and there has to be a reason why they said that, Robbie. And when he was talking about, when he was asked on 710 why you met with Jaden Daniels and Drake May, he said, well, you never know. You never know what opportunities are going to be there. When a guy falls, a trade opportunity is there. And when he said that, Robbie, I kept thinking, well, what's he talking about there? Because he's not talking about you never know when another team might trade up. He's basically saying you never know if either of those players will be available. I just think, Robbie, that I've got a hunch that there's something going on here. It's felt like something's been going on ever since Mike McDonald came in. They haven't committed to they haven't. Everything feels vague, and I just don't know whether to me, they're just going to go through this and have a really uneventful off season. I'm just not sure about that, Robbie. And I can't say, like, I can see Big Mike saying, okay, trade up with who? And I get that. I'm not saying that I've got all the answers, that I know what they're going to do. Maybe it's New England at number 3. Maybe it's on draft day and it's because Drake May doesn't go 3rd overall and he's there at 5 and they trade up to number 5. I don't know. But I've just got a feeling, Robbie, that the Seahawks might be planning something here in terms of trading up. I've got a bit of a hunch on that. And that they're perhaps going to exhaust all possibilities and all avenues to do that. And then if that is not possible for whatever reason, because it costs too much or the partners are not there, then I think they're probably just going to take the best lineman at number 16, whether that's pass rusher or offensive lineman. But I think right now, this week, John Schneider's been doing a lot of work to find out what are the chances of getting up for a quarterback. That's my theory. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like that theory a lot more than I like the fact that, your theory on JJ McCarthy going top 5, but I like that. I really do. Like I said, if John has a conviction on a quarterback and wants to trade his whole draft stock to move up to get that player, I'm all for it because it's a bold move that we haven't seen in a while. We've seen them make dumb moves that may seem bold, trading 2 firsts and a 3rd for a freaking safety, but this would be a bold move for a position that is literally the most valuable position you can go for. So if he has that conviction and wants to do it, I'm all for it. I love the idea. I actually do. I wish they would have done this last year. Like I said, I was hoping last year this would be after seeing them throw last year, there's a strong difference between the quarterbacks last year and this year. And I don't have the same convictions I had last year as I do with this quarterback class this year. So it'd be hard. It's hard for me to justify them moving up. But if John sees it, then I'm going to trust that and say at least he did something that was a bold move. And you're right, I didn't see him at all on the big screen or anything. They didn't show him when I was there. I didn't see him on the TV. Yeah, I did see Mike McDaniel sleeping. That was interesting. The Miami Dolphins.
Mike McDaniel's had a sleep. I didn't see that.
Yeah, they showed him at when I was actually there, they showed him and he was sleeping.
Man, I know how that feels. There was a couple of times during that DB drills that I was doing the same thing nearly.
That was pretty great though. Pretty great. And then the crowd cheered and he kind of woke up and looked around. I don't know, maybe he was playing it off, but it was super funny. I should like that guy, but I think you're onto something. I think this could be something that would be interesting to see them do. And I'm all for a bold move for a quarterback. I'm all for it.
I just think it might be the year, Robbie. I think it will surprise a lot of people when it happened, but I don't think it should Because what does John keep saying? Every interview, Robbie, we've drafted 2 quarterbacks in 14 years and we're not happy about that. And it's the start of a new era for the Seahawks. And I don't know, like part of me, I was driving around earlier and I was thinking to myself, I can easily imagine them deciding, look, we're installing a new offense here. Maybe having a young quarterback while you install a new offense with a first-time NFL offensive coordinator, it might not fit. Like they might want to install the offense, get everything settled down, and then think about installing a new quarterback. But then I also thought, as I was having that brief moment there, Robbie, I was thinking, okay, but what prevents you from keeping Geno Smith and still making that bold move? So that, you're installing your new offense with the experienced veteran bridge quarterback, and the new quarterback you've traded up for does the Patrick Mahomes thing, because Patrick Mahomes redshirted his first season and the Chiefs traded up for Patrick Mahomes. So actually that could work, and that would fit in with Geno being told he's going to be on the roster next year. And it could be that they're setting up the perfect, as some people would see it, and I probably agree with those people, Robbie, the perfect bridge operation where you have Geno Smith starting this year and then a rookie behind them, learning the offense, ready to come in 12 months' time. And if John could look at this, and I'm with you, Robbie. Me and you, you watched them live. I watched them on the NFL Network a year ago, and we felt really good about Stroud and Richardson and Levis, who all threw at the combine. They didn't take a quarterback that year. I think we're in a very different situation now, because if you think a year ago, Pete Carroll was still coming to the end even last year. And now we know what we know, because back then people were going, Pete's going to coach for as long as he wants. But clearly, no, he had like a year. It was like the mentality of the Seahawks, or at least from Pete Carroll's point of view a year ago, was probably, we've got to win now. So like going and spending a top 5 pick or trading up for a quarterback wasn't very realistic. Like getting the best player at 5 was probably more realistic. Going and getting the best player at 20 was more realistic for the Seahawks in that situation. Now they've got a new head coach who's the youngest head coach in the league. It's a complete reset of everything. Like now might be the time to go and make that bold move, go and get a quarterback. And here's the other thing. If the Seahawks think it's hard to move up and get a quarterback now, what if Geno Smith starts next year? You don't dress quarterback. What if Mike McDonald and this new staff, who everybody really likes? I really like the new staff, Robbie. I think you do. We're feeling really positive, upbeat about that. What if the Seahawks win 10 games next year and they're not good enough to actually make any noise in the playoffs, but end up picking 21st or 22nd? It's going to be even more harder to move up into like the top 5 to go and get a quarterback if you're further back. So this might be the best, most optimal opportunity to go and move up and make that big trade. And it might not be possible. You might not be able to compete with the Vikings and the Broncos and the Giants. And I think the Falcons are probably going to sign Kirk Cousins. But, you might not be able to sort of compete with those teams to get up from 16. But I think, John, that's his mission right now. I just get a little bit of a hunch that maybe that's what he's doing. And the reason I think that, Robbie, is because I can see John liking Jaden Daniels a lot, because it kind of looks like Lamar Jackson. And Mike McDonald's had a lot of success with Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. Good character, explosive downfield, difference maker. The 49ers do not like playing scrambling quarterbacks, so that's a big advantage as well. So I think they could really like Jaden Daniels. Drake May, with his size and his arm and he's kind of making batshit stuff happen, is very John Schneider. JJ McCarthy, I know we've obviously had this conversation before, Robbie, but JJ McCarthy is that he might be the alpha of the group. And I'll just say one thing, because I don't want to rehash yesterday's argument. It wasn't an argument, yesterday's discussion, Robbie. Can you remember when I interviewed Scott McCloughan? One of the 2 times I've done an interview with Scott McCloughan. And I asked him, what do you look for in a quarterback? And he said, I want someone who gets in the huddle and everybody just sort of looks at that guy and goes, it's okay, he's here. And he just gets in there and he's calm and he's poised and he just keeps everybody on track and he gets it going. And Scott would also say, like, third downs are the big thing. What is this guy doing on third downs? I'm going to watch the tape and watch this guy on third downs. Well, That's Scott McCloughan saying that's not me. I think a lot of people have a lot of respect for Scott McCloughan as a personnel evaluator. What does JJ McCarthy do very well? Third downs, and I think we're getting a sense that when he will go in that huddle, he will instill that level of confidence with his teammates. So I'm not saying that the Seahawks are going to trade up for JJ McCarthy, but I'm just saying I would have ruled it out last week, and now I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying. And then the other possibility, Robbie, is Michael Penix Jr., who I still think might be there at 16. But if they did need to move up, because we're seeing a lot of mixed things now, aren't we? A lot of people are now feeling emboldened to go, I always thought Michael Penix was the best quarterback in the draft. We're seeing a lot of like ex-pros saying that today. I've noticed they're all getting retweeted by like Softy and that and the Washington crew. So, maybe he will be off the board like you seem to think. But can I just read you this as well, Robbie? This was from Jeff Howe. I don't know if you know who Jeff Howe is. He's the athletic journalist. I think he used to work for the Boston Globe. He is very well connected. He does a lot of good journalism. And this is what he wrote about Michael Penix in a rank. He spoke to a lot of different people in the league yesterday and wrote an article about it. And he put, the lefty was a captivating story last season, and teams viewed him as a third rounder who seemed to be rising into the second round territory. In December, one executive wondered if a team might be desperate and aggressive enough to take Penix in the first round. However, the performance in the loss in the national championship game highlighted teams' greatest concerns with Penix. While under constant pressure from Michigan's pass rush, Penix's mechanics and accuracy were a major issue, and he took a beating that clearly impacted his game. That element, because of Penix's injury history, which is 2 torn ACLs, 2 season-ending shoulder injuries, really worried teams. On the positive side, Penix has a great arm, throws a good deep ball, largely played very well in clutch situations, and is believed to be a strong leader. If he can book the injury history and improve the mechanical breakdowns while under duress, evaluators believe he can develop into a starter. Penix's draft stock is a matter of which qualities teams will prioritize. The belief is he'll be a fringe second or third rounder. So I loved what he did yesterday, Robbie. You loved what he did yesterday. I like a lot of aspects of his game. So do you. I feel like we've gone above and beyond on SeahawksDraftBlog.com to talk about a balance, the great and the not so great with Michael Penix Jr. But when you read that, Robbie, that doesn't sound like he's going to go in the top 15.
Yeah, I mean, again, but that's one evaluator, right? There's going to be a team, and he did say in that.
Well, that was with different sources. He spoke to a lot of different league sources,
right? And he said there could be someone who wants him to take him in the first, right? There's still the possibility. I think after seeing that meeting with him, and if what's true, the medicals have all checked out. I mean, stuff happens, right? I mean, injuries happen, but like if you can, he's proven to stay healthy the last 2 years. It's a mixed bag. You could look at the Texas game and see what he did there versus the Michigan. But that Michigan team, that was something else, right? And you even talked about it yesterday. That was like, hands down, by far the best team in college football. I mean, they were just simply better. I mean, with Penix, he wasn't the sole purpose for losing that game. Did he play great? No, but he definitely was a great reason why they won that Texas game. And, you got to see him actually scramble and move. And I think he's more athletic. I think when teams get a chance to put him through their own drills, I think there's a really good chance that he's going to go really, really high.
The thing is, though, I think I agree with you. There's always only ever one team. It takes one team to take a player high, and he has got a great arm, and I think there are some very positive things about him. But I understand where Jeff Howe's sources when they say those things, because during the season, Robbie, I was kind of floating between a second and a third round grade myself, and having gone and watched him live in the Apple Cup, that you saw the best and the worst of Michael Penix in that Apple Cup live. And then I can remember what I wrote after the Texas game. So, because these are the things, Robbie, that you have to consider as well as, a great combine. This is what I wrote after the Texas game. He started the year throwing 74.9% completions in the first 5 games, playing some pretty easy opponents. He then went on an 8-game run where his completion percentage dropped to 60.1%. His completion percentage, Robbie, in the first 5 games was 75%, and in the next 8 it was 60. That's a huge drop. And when you watch those games, he was unimpressive in a lot of those games. there were a lot of aimless deep throws, just sort of throwing it downfield and hoping that Roma Dunze would run underneath it. And at times where you just needed him to take what was on offer. For example, was it Arizona State that they really struggled against? They were a bad team. Like what you wanted him to do was just take what's there, just manipulate a couple of drives, get some momentum going. And they just couldn't. And they were really lucky to win that game. And there were moments like that where you just thought, okay, during those two splits, the first 5 games and the second 8 games, where there's a huge discrepancy in completion percentage, his big time throws, 2.6 per game, stayed the same. So even though the completion percentage went down, Robbie, he was still making nearly 3 big time throws per game. And it just spoke to someone who was just he was still being able to make the big plays downfield, but there were too many big shots that weren't coming off. That's all he ended up becoming. And in the NFL, I just wonder whether teams are going to go, hang on a minute. Yeah, he's got a great arm and, he will produce some explosive plays for us. But if we want a methodical drive that kills time and just takes what's there, which is what you have to do a lot in the NFL, can this guy do it? And then on top of the injury history and stuff like that, it might just make some teams pause for thought. His PFF grade, incidentally, in the first 5 games, 89.9, and then in the next 8, 71.6. So his performance really tailed off in that 8-game period. And that often gets forgotten because people focus on Michigan or they focus on Texas. But I watched every game, and I'm not a Husky. I watched every game so that I could have a complete view on Michael Penix. And people can say, Penix isn't going to go here, and Penix is going to do this. Like, I see in the chat now, Penix isn't dropping around 2. Penix is going to go between these picks. Listen, I've said it for weeks. It would not surprise me if he goes in the top 20. It would not surprise me if he goes in round 3. I just feel like his stock is so broad. It's almost impossible to guess what he is. So I guess what I'm saying, Robbie, is even if they don't trade up for one of these quarterbacks, maybe they will manipulate a way to get Michael Penix. But sort of what I'm suggesting here is that I think the Seahawks might well see this as the draft to move up and get their QB. As much as John might really, really like Quinn Ewers, you can't put all your eggs in the Quinn Ewers basket next year. And I'm not sure that Carson Beck is worth waiting for. I think he's okay. And then the Shedeur Sanders, who might be the number 1 overall pick. But do you want Prime on the phone every week saying, why are you doing to my son? Do you really want that? Like, that's what's going to happen. Whoever goes for Prime's son is getting a slice of Prime, okay? Like, Prime is going to make himself heard if you are not doing well. So that's going to have to come into the mind of some of these teams. So, what do we think here, Robert? Do you understand? Like,
yeah, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you by any means. I just think that arm, there's going to be I think there's someone within the top 15 that's going to look at that arm and go, we can work with that. There's things that we
Levis
can.
Had a great arm, though.
Yeah. What's that?
Levis had a great arm.
Right, but there's also things coming out about Levis, some sign that like little cocky, some sort of like he didn't have that like leadership maybe skills that Penix has. I mean, I just
injury history though with Penix.
Yeah, there are things. I'm not saying there aren't things, but I just saying you even said it. You said it. That arm compares to Mahomes and Allen.
And Allen,
and Allen. It's as good as you can get, right? Those are, and he could put it places not a lot of NFL quarterbacks can put it. And there's an opportunity there that someone's going to look at him and go, I like what he can do. And I think I can mold him into being something great. I don't know. I don't know why. I just have conviction. I don't think he's going to be there at 16. I think he's going to go higher than people think. I don't think he's going to drop, because I'll be honest with you. I was on the same page with you for a long time. I believed that he would probably be there in the second. I didn't think he was going to I don't think he's going to make it that far now. After seeing him at the combine and this week, something's changed. I can't quite put a finger on it. Give me some time to marinate this, like how it was for you with JJ McCarthy. Give me some time to process this a little bit more so I can understand where I'm coming from. But I think there's something inside me that's telling me he ain't getting getting to 16.
Yeah. You may well be right, but this is why I keep sort of saying, I'm not usually this vague about players at this point in the process. It's March the 3rd. I've been watching these guys since May last year. Like, I find it really hard to project where Penix is going to go because, like you say, there are so many things where you go, that's great, that's great, that's great. And yet there are things that maybe go, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I could easily imagine, look, Hawk Blogger mentioned this. He quote tweeted and he made a really good point. I think that there could be teams, Robbie, that really regret passing on Michael Penix. I could imagine a scenario where Penix lasts well into day 2 and may go late 2nd or early 3rd. And 5 years later, everyone's wondering, what the hell was the NFL thinking? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time where that's happened. Jalen Hurts went late 2nd, and he ended up taking Philadelphia to the Super Bowl last year. So, things like that can happen where players do last. And look, people are in the comments now sort of comparing Penix to Levis. First of all, to the person who said Levis was a douche, I've spoken to Will Levis personally, and he is not a douche. And I've spoken to a whole bunch of people who just thought that he could walk on water at Kentucky. So he wasn't a douche. The problem with Levis was, as far as I can tell, he just didn't handle the off-season process very well. He didn't go to the Senior Bowl because he had like a foot injury that was lingering, so he didn't get to the Senior Bowl, and I think that sort of put a few people off a little bit. And then he threw at the combine, and then around the pro day circuit, Robbie was constantly posting pictures of him looking, like in great shape, but also I think it was a bit off-putting, like people wondering, what are you doing here? Are you an Instagram model or are you a quarterback? And I think that sort of soured a few teams on him. And, somebody else then said Levis wasn't as well regarded as Penix. He certainly didn't have the success that Penix had. I think his situation was a lot worse than Washington's. I think if you'd have put Levis with Kalen DeBoer, Roma Dunze, Jalen Polt, Jalen McMillan, Troy Fautanu, Roger Rosengarten, et cetera, I think that he would have had a lot more success in college than he did. But certainly Penix is, he took Washington to the national championship game. So his story of college is totally on a different level to Levis's. But I do think that Levis had a chance to go very early. It didn't happen for a reason. And I think that could happen with Penix as well. And I do think there are a lot of teams out there that increasingly are thinking, we need someone who can get out of the pocket. We need someone who can throw on the run. We need somebody who can extend plays. And Penix has not shown that he's able to do that.
That's a pure passer. He is phenomenal.
Without a doubt. And in fairness, that's what we keep saying. That's the sort of he is very difficult to sort of, there will be a team somewhere, Robbie, that goes, I'm sold because of this. And there's going to be a team somewhere that goes, nah, not for me because of this. And I don't know if either team will be wrong, if that makes sense. But the fact that the Seahawks appointed Grubb as coach means, one, they've got a unique insight into Michael Penix Jr. for a start. And two, we know that they're very attracted to that kind of offense, which makes me think that they could easily be very interested in Michael Penix. And also, it'll be a huge story if they pass on him.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. That you make a very good point, because if he does fall to 16 and we don't take him, then I think that says a lot.
Certainly does. Obviously, then they could find a way. Look, when I'm talking about trading up, Robbie, maybe they'd take the best available offensive lineman. Maybe their trade up would be, they've traded their first round pick next year to get back into round 1 at the end and go and get Penix. Or maybe in the top of round 2, they might do something like that. You see, there are options there. But I do just wonder a little bit whether John is looking at the top 4 quarterbacks and thinking, I want to go and get one of them. Or the top 4 as people. Obviously, Penix is QB3 on my board behind Daniels and Caleb Williams. So he's not, my top 4 are not the consensus top 4 within the NFL, but it does seem like a consensus top 4 is emerging. And like I say, Robbie, it's, we've ended up talking a lot about Michael Penix here, but I think the sort of the broader point that I wanted to make was that, do you think there's anything in this, the fact that, we have talked about John it didn't seem to be that prevalent, and maybe the TV cameras just didn't pick him up, but they often did. He was on the NFL Network before the combine started. He is quite a high profile GM now, and Chris Ballard was always on the team, and they showed Eric DeCosta and they showed, all sorts of different GMs. You would have thought they would have shown, John, because he's a very high-profile GM now within the league, and he's just taken over the team for the Seahawks, and he's there, and there was nothing, and also the Geno vagueness, I just get a vibe, Robbie, that something's going on. Do you feel that, or am I reaching?
No, I don't think you're reaching at all. I think you're onto something. I don't know if that's exactly right, but I do think you're onto something, because there's been a lot of weird, vague talk about Geno. They keep bringing up Drew Lock for some reason. He's a free agent. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on that just feel different than last year. And maybe part of it is the fact that, we're used to hearing Pete speak and not used to hearing John speak that much. And the fact that he is speaking more, maybe this is the way he does things. I don't really know, but it does feel different. There's a lot of things that he has said that, are just very vague, and you kind of have to try to put the pieces together. I think you're doing a good job of trying to put something together there for sure.
And I'm also interested. I don't know, Robbie. Maybe I'm completely wrong on this, and I'd love your opinion on this. Do you get the sense that John is just gonna muddle along, like being stuck in the sort of this middle ground? Does that feel like a John? I mean, because I suppose you could argue that's what the Seahawks have kind of done for a few years now. Like, they tried to accelerate things with the Jamal Adams trade. It was just a shocking trade. But then after that, trading Russell Wilson, they didn't really. Even as I'm saying it, Robbie, I'm finding counters to my own argument, because they spent a shitload of money on Draymond Jones a year ago. So that was them being aggressive, I suppose. The fact that they had all of the picks and they were spending money, and then you've got the Jamal. It feels like they've tried to push the envelope. They have been very aggressive in the past. If John sees a quarterback in this draft and he thinks that's the guy, and it could be Drake May, like the rest of the league's kind of the Seahawks kind of look for opportunities, and they saw that with Russell, and I think John saw it with Mahomes and probably felt like people were sleeping on Mahomes. Hey, maybe we can get him at 25. And then with Josh Allen, again, Josh Allen was the third quarterback taken in his draft class. Like, John would have had him as rated first, Robbie. And Drake May might be the third or the fourth quarterback taken this year, but John might think, no, that's the kind of guy that I want. He can run this offense. He can throw it around the park. He can scramble. He can improvise. He can produce a bit of magic. And he might just go up and get him. And the more I think about it, the more I just think, yeah, because eventually the Seahawks are going to have to do something. John Schneider is not going to be defined. This is just the thing, Robert. All this Geno argument that keeps going around? This is what it comes down to. Does anybody seriously think that John Schneider is going to allow his chance to run the operation to be defined by a quarterback that he, like Geno Smith? And that's not to discredit. I'm not discrediting Geno Smith's play. I'm just saying the situation doesn't seem very likely that John Schneider would go, okay, I'm just going to roll with Geno Smith. John Schneider is going to get his guy. I have to believe that, Robbie. And I know he can't force it. And I know if there's no quarterback there, then he won't do it. But if there is one this year, I think he's going to go after him. And at what point are you eventually going to have to just take a chance and believe in yourself? Otherwise you are just going to end up like a whole bunch of teams who, the Falcons will spend $40 million on Kirk Cousins this week, Robbie, and they will go absolutely nowhere. Nowhere. And Big Mike says, but Robbie snagged Russ in round 3 in the chat. Will he think he can do that again? Maybe, but you ain't getting anybody in round 3 this year. There's only one quarterback of the ones we're talking about, unless Penix does drop to that range, who could potentially be available, and that's Rattler. And we went through that yesterday. I'm not sure that he's a Seahawk, but as much as I rate him. So, is this the year, I suppose? And you can make a compelling case for it perhaps being the year, Robbie.
Yeah, just to counter argue that, I think you could make the case where, as I was saying earlier, the trade down, and I think they're going to take a quarterback. It might not be one of those top guys. I think I said that yesterday as well. They're going to take a quarterback at some point. I think personally, I think John had his eye on someone who didn't come out. I mean, Q Ewers obviously is a name he's dropped before, but I think there's somebody that he was hoping that would come out this year that didn't, and had his eye on them. And I'm not saying that he's playing his cards to to wait till next year, but I could see a scenario where he drafts a quarterback as someone as a bridge to, let Geno be the bridge to say next year, they're like, well, we drafted this quarterback, but if he gets the opportunity to trade up again, he might do it. He could be aggressive next year and this year just try to pick up more draft capital. Cause I think the reason he originally wanted the draft capital was to make that trade up for the quarterback, but I don't know if the quarterback's there. Maybe it is Drake May. Maybe that's the guy he's had in mind the whole time. Maybe you're right. And then he's going to trade up and go get him. I don't know. Me personally, I don't feel like that's him, but that's just my own personal assessment of the player, not anything that John's doing. So I don't know, but you could be right. You could be, but
or maybe it's JJ McCarthy.
Stop with that shit. Hey,
I've got something for you, Robbie. I've got something for you.
All right.
From the same article. Jeff Howe, have a listen to this. Teams have been fired up all week to watch McCarthy throw at the combine, as Saturday is going to represent a turning point for his draft buzz. He's got a good arm and is expected to win the day and wow observers. I don't think that happened, but
I was going to say, well, okay, good. He threw and wasn't impressed.
I think he impressed in other ways, but definitely not. He wasn't the winner of the throwing process. Anyway, McCarthy is viewed as a great leader and plus athlete who didn't get enough opportunities to show off his arm in Michigan's run-heavy offense. Because of that, some have questioned how he'll transition to a pass-heavy offense in the NFL. That's the unknown element for teams. McCarthy represents the start of the second tier of QBs as teams view a teardrop from Daniels to here. Because just to clarify, in this list, it goes Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then JJ McCarthy. He then goes, still, there's a chance he goes as high as the 4th pick if a team gets anxious enough to select him and decides to trade up with the Arizona Cardinals, whom league sources view as willing to move down. But, Robbie, here's the big one. Hold on to your hat. It's conceivable the Giants, Falcons, Vikings, Broncos, Raiders, Seahawks, and Steelers could be in play for McCarthy. Even if it's just 2 or 3 of those teams, it makes a trade up the board more likely. And the action on McCarthy could kickstart the draft night drama.
Wow. Okay. I'm just going to tell you right now, if someone does trade up for JJ McCarthy in the top 5, I will personally say, I will buy you what do you want? I'll buy you a beer. I'll send you a jersey. How about that? I'll send you a Seahawks jersey.
JJ McCarthy one.
What JJ McCarthy Seahawks jersey?
Throwback.
Throwback. Yes. I just can't see it. I'm sorry. Like, you put the tape on, he might be an alpha male and has that leadership and all those things. I just can't see him in the top 5. I just can't. I'm sorry. He just doesn't have that it factor for me. I don't know.
But the thing is I agree with you. I do not think JJ McCarthy is impressive on tape, Robbie. And I didn't think he was that impressive yesterday. And this is the thing, like, a lot of people responded to my article that I wrote yesterday, which was basically like a recap of what we talked about, and said, I'm so glad, Rob, that you've changed your tune on JJ McCarthy. I was like, well, no, I haven't. It's not that I've changed my tune on him as a player. I just now think he's going to go high. Like, before, I didn't understand why that was being talked about, and now I do. So my thought on him as the tape, suggests, I'm not that excited by him. But that article, Robbie, says exactly what I was saying yesterday, doesn't it? It's saying that he could go in the top 5, and it's also suggesting that the Seahawks could move up. And that's the other thing, to sort of build on the point I was making before. I just wonder whether the Seahawks will jump into the top 4, Robbie, whether that is the Pats at 3 or whether it's the Cardinals at 4. And I get it, that trading with a division rival is not very likely. I want to say that I'm sure there's a team that's done that recently, though, isn't there? Was it like the Eagles moved up with somebody? Was it the Cowboys? I don't know. I mean, there was something like that happen. But if the Cardinals think, like, let's imagine this scenario. You trade up to number 4. Cardinals go, okay, we'll do the deal. But who you trading up for? Oh, we want Drake May or JJ McCarthy. If the Cardinals think, we think those guys suck, like then they're going to let you do the train, aren't they? So it's not completely, I guess, out of the question that they would do that. I don't think it's very likely, but I could imagine, Rob, a situation where they go up into the top 4 and they just go, we like Williams, Drake May, Jane Daniels, and JJ McCarthy, and we will take one of them, just like the Niners did with Trey Lance when they traded up to number 3. And I know that Trey Lance bombed and crashed and burned, and that could happen for the Seahawks if they do such a move. But I just wonder. And the thing with McCarthy, Mike McDaniel knows all about him. Harbaugh's son, what's his name again? Jay Harbaugh? Harbaugh's son was there last year, Robbie. Knows all about JJ McCarthy. Hey, Jay. John Schneider. Hey, bro. Tell me about this McCarthy dude. He's amazing. He's like he's the best ever. Like, I agree with my dad who said he should be the first overall pick. Listen, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not predicting it, but no other MF is talking about this, and we are. So we'll just see. We will just see.
Yeah, that's crazy about this time of year, right? I mean, was it just a few years ago when people were saying Malik Willis was going to be the first or second overall pick, and look how far he fell. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm not agreeing either. I don't know. I just can't see it. It's a tough one for me to wrap my mind around.
I mean, just to go on a complete tangent, Robbie, can I just tell you something? Right.
Sure.
You're never going to believe this. Okay. Amarius Mims is 340 pounds.
Yep.
He just ran a short shuttle 4.33.
Damn.
I'm trying to think. That is mind-blowing. That is... I'm going to get the... Right, okay, short shuttle. Josh Wallace, the cornerback from Michigan, who is 185 pounds, ran a slower short shuttle than Amarius Mims. He is 160 pounds lighter than Amarius Mims. He is a human size lighter than Amarius Mims and ran a slower short shuttle, Robbie.
I mean, that's impressive.
No one talks about Amarius Mims in the top 10. No one ever talks about that.
Yeah, he's skyrocketed.
Effing unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
4.33 at 340. I don't understand. I'm going to get to the super chats in a minute. I don't understand. Why do people post stuff like this? Like, you're an idiot, mate. So tunnel visioned, he thinks we'll give up a haul to draft a mid QB. I mean, are you that anti-intellectual that you can't understand the point that I'm making? It's just so... The conversation within this fan base sometimes is so dumb. Like, just... Why are you so anti-ideas? Why are you so anti-open conversations? If you just want us to come on here and just talk boring nonsense that's obvious that everyone talks about, that's fine. You've got to have some ideas. And if you are open-minded, as I clearly am, as someone who doesn't rate JJ McCarthy, but is prepared to have a conversation about the Seahawks potentially drafting him, I don't see why you can't embrace that, quite frankly. So get in the sea. Anyway, what a short shuttle. I'm now intrigued, Robbie, to see I'm going to have a look at see what some of these other short shuttles are before we get to the super chats.
I was trying to find his 40 time. Did he run like the second fastest 40 time?
He ran, but he injured himself on the second run. So he ran a 5.07, which is really good at 340 pounds.
Yeah.
So Tanner Bortolini, 4.28 short shuttle. Tanner Bortolini could be the next Seahawks center. Like he ticks every box for them as a center. Dominic Pooney, 4.40. Dylan McMahon, 4.45. Jarrett Kingston, 4.47. I like him. Joe Alt on a 4.51, which is good for him. And then there's a lot of mediocre ones, like Tyler Guyton didn't run a good one, 4.71. Cedric Van Pran, 4.82. Ugh. Trent Jones, I really like, 4.87. That's not very good. Okay, so that's what the short shuttles did. Any of them? A lot of them did the short shuttle, Robbie. Fair play to the offensive lineman. Loads of them did the 3-cone. Tanner Bortolini, 7-1-6-3 cones. Unbelievable. Dylan McMahon, 7-2-6. Joe Alt, 7-3-1. Really, really good. I'm trying to see if Marius Mims did a 3-cone. He didn't. But I think he did this short shuttle, Robbie, and then ran straight to the airport because that's a top 10. That's a number 1 overall pick, short shuttle there.
Yep.
Okay, super chats to finish. Misfit says, is Abe Lucas too tall to move inside? I don't think so, Robbie. Do you think?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
A lot of people are projecting him to guard, actually. I think he'll be fine. I mean, he's like the same height as Zach Zinter, there or thereabouts. So, Matt says, with having an outside shot of being in the mix for every QB except Caleb Williams, which one would you be most chuffed with? If I'm using that correctly, with us taking. Chuffed is a great British word. We definitely use that. Chuffed is a word like delighted. It's like a version of saying that. Very Yorkshire. So, Robbie, who would you... So, of the quarterbacks not named Caleb Williams, who would you be most chuffed with if you found out the Seahawks had landed?
Oh, I mean, Jaden Daniels would be fantastic. I mean, I think he'd be a heck of a player.
Not Penix then at 16?
I mean, I see a lot of the same flaws that you do in Penix, and I'm not saying I don't. I just think there's going to a team fall in love with him. I'm not saying it's going to be the Hawks. I just think, like, for me, I don't know if I would be intrigued for sure. I mean, if any quarterback they select, I'm going to be intrigued with because it's the most important position. I want to see what is capable. But like someone that really gets me, what was the word? Chuffed. Daniels for sure, and then I think Rattler. Honestly,
I can honestly say that I think I'd be excited with any quarterback. If John Schneider traded up for a quarterback, I could get excited about that. I mean, everyone can look at my horizontal board and see how I've got them ranked, and it may change a little bit. I've got a lot of work to do after the combine, but it may change a bit after the tape review. But you know, I think anybody that John Schneider trades up for, I'd be intrigued by. I'd be chuffed with. Big Mike says, thanks for all your time and efforts the last 3 days. Where do you see Rattler now as a possible hedge later in the draft if there's no trade up for QB? Do you think JS would go that route? Appreciate the super chat, Big Mike. We did touch on this yesterday, didn't we, Robbie? I don't think the Seahawks, I don't see them as an obvious fit for Spencer Rattler because I think that they've gone so big on character now that I think when they draft a quarterback, it will be somebody of the flawless character makeup category. And I think Rattler's more likely to go somewhere where they're not as fixated on that. And that's why I suggested the Rams yesterday as a great fit for him.
Yeah, and I disagree with you on this one. I think the character concerns are not there anymore. I don't feel like he has the character concerns. I don't think like he's not doing stuff that's really dumb or anything like that. He was, it was immature, and I think he's grown up a lot. So I think there's a lot to be said about that.
There is something to be said about that, but I just think it'll be in the back of their mind. And yeah, I stand by everything I've said. I think I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I just don't see it. And people who are regulars know that I like Spencer Rattler. I really liked what he did last year in difficult situation, and I rate him as a player. But I just don't. I don't think the Seahawks are going to draft him, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll do a bit more digging on that as well. And Joper726 says JJ McCarthy will be the next Brian Greasy. You agree with that, Robbie?
I mean, someone said earlier, we don't know what JJ McCarthy is really capable of, and I think that's a really good way of saying it. But I think that's probably a fairly accurate assessment there, Brian Greasy.
Okay, well, there we go. The combine is done. My head feels like it's got an anvil set on top of it, frankly, as I'm sick and tired. And seeing Amarius Mims's short shuttle there, Robbie, has reminded me that I have if I've got an Amarius Mims-sized article to write now. So I'm going to go off and write it before sleeping. So I just wanted to thank everybody who sent a super chat in over the last 4 days, everybody who has watched, the numbers in particular. But see, when Robbie turns up on the stream, the numbers just go. And that has been the case for the last 2 days. So I appreciate everybody jumping on and joining in with the streams, and for checking out SeahawksDraftBlog.com. As always, doing these combined things. I can't remember the first time we did a live blog. It might be 2010. It's just, another year's rolled by, and we have free agency to look forward to. Does it open officially on the 13th?
11th. I think.
Well, that's when the legal tampering is the 11th. So that's when the news will start to break.
That's when news will start coming. Yeah.
So we should have some. I don't think the Seahawks will be doing anything too early in free agency. But then, Robbie, maybe in the next few days, we'll see Adam Schefter breaking news.
Again, I'm going to go back.
Seahawks traded up into the top 5, and they've traded up to number 3 because they are going to go and get a quarterback, and that'll be their big move. And then they'll just get a free agency and be like, right, okay, we're going to do what we can do, but we're going to get this quarterback in. He's going to sit behind Geno for a year, and there we go. And Robbie, it'd make sense because JJ McCarthy's only 21.
Oh my God.
Michael Penix he's 24.
25, yeah, 24, 25, yeah.
So make sense to have him sit for a year, learn the ropes.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I think
you might be getting that jersey.
No, if that happens, I'm buying it for you, 100%. Now I'm more interested to see who they let go, because I don't think they're going to be big players in free agency. So we'll see some names. I'm more interested to see is Quandre Diggs going to be here next year? When is Jamal Adams going to get released? These kind of things, and then see what kind of money they have to play with. And
what going to keep Leonard Williams?
We'll find out. Again, you said Rams. I actually think that's where he's going to end up. That's where I think he's going. But
Robbie, that is worse than anything I've said about JJ McCarthy or Spencer Rattler in the last 2 days.
I just think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a real dick punch, and it's going to be unpleasant.
Someone said in the chat that I'm a Michigan homer. Like, if you knew how much I wanted to throw my laptop across the room every time Rich Eisen mentioned Michigan over the last 4 days, I don't think you would. I don't have any team. I don't follow any college team. I'm British. I have no reason. I have a Huskies hat and a Cougars jumper somewhere upstairs because I've been to Seattle. That's it. Anyway, there we go. We when free agency kicks in, we may well come together and join in. But I've just got a feeling there's something interesting around the corner for the Seahawks. We will wait and see.
It would make it fun. It would make it fun, right?
It really would. We've just had a last gasp super chat from Mickle. So he says, if Seattle traded on a few spots and landed Fautanu, Fuagu, plus a second rounder in which they draft Penix Jr., then they trade away the 2025 first and Lockett to move into the first again, plus third, should we be happy? I think that's a lot of stuff going on there. And what I will say is, I think if you trade down to get a second, Mikkel, you're going to trade it out of the range for Fautanu and Fuagu. You will not be able to get either of those guys. And then I don't know if a 2025 first and Lockett is going to get you back in the first again. I think you'd probably have to throw in more to do that. I think it'd be a big package in order to do that. But appreciate the super chat. Appreciate everybody who sent in a super chat. Anybody who's supporting the channel and supporting the work. And
I'm going to answer that real fast. Should we be happy? Yes. Yeah.
Well, that'd be quite haul.
Yeah, if that actually happened, yes, I would be happy.
I mean, that's talking about Fautanu, Fuagu, Penix, and another first rounder this year, Robbie. Quite a busy draft day. Imagine writing that up afterwards. That'd be a long article. That'd be as long as the combine preview. So, look, thank you for everything. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment to help with the algorithm. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.